Oh, and welcome to Extra Hours, the show that is the evening version. Well, evening here in the US. Around the world, it's a different time, but we created this show as the later version so that other people that are just waking up or at their noontime workday, where they can come in and ask questions, as well as folks like Vic Hernandez from Spring Hill, Missouri, that has one that we're chomping on the bit to get at. We've got some of the regulars. I'm filling in for Grant Whitehead. My name's Guy Cochran, and usually Grant's here, but he's up in the air. He's flying around. So we've got this illustrious crew that, for those of you who haven't met them before, we'll introduce them now. We'll go ahead and start with Alex Lindsay.
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
Nice to see you again with a fresh haircut. I think you didn't even have that this morning, right? This is
No, I had it this morning. I think that it was just crazy this morning. It was my first weekday back. I was gone for the last week. I was in North Carolina, hanging out with family, and so I got back. But yeah, it was a little crazy this morning. But I took a walk right before this thing, so
now
it's a little more
you're
calm.
your zen.
Exactly.
Kind of things have gone down after that chaotic flight. Did you actually bring your Apple Vision Pro on the plane?
Oh man, did I? Yeah, yeah. It's funny. It's the first time. I don't fly without an Apple Vision Pro at this point. So sometimes if I go to LA and I got a bunch of stuff, maybe because it's only a 1 hour flight. But generally, I fly with it all the time. And generally, my MO is that I get an aisle, or no, I'm sorry, a window seat. And the funny thing is that I leave my light. I shut the window, but leave my light on because it doesn't. I need to track it. Like the tracker needs to have the data in front of it anyway. But and then I'm just I bring enough food and drink and everything else. I don't need to talk to anyone. I don't need to do anything. And so I'm just in my own little world for however long that flight is. But my wife likes to sit she wanted to sit by the window. So I sat in the aisle. And then it became a thing. People kept on, like they bump, like, do you want anything to eat? And I pull my headset, and the worst part is you pull your headset off, and the problem is you've got the AirPod Max is on top of it. Then you've got this thing that you kind of like
Ordeal.
Like if someone knocks you on the shoulder, responding quickly is like a thing. Like you're like,
Yeah.
I don't, and so
You just need some index cards that just say like "Do not disturb,"
do not, yeah, no,
like
exactly.
Diet Coke,
I'm really
please.
okay.
Or we have like four of them.
I will admit that there was too much stress for a while. I would I'd turn down you can turn up this, you can turn up the surrounding environment so you don't see anything. That's kind of how I operate now. So I sit there and I just turn the Joshua tree is where I like to do it, and so I just turn Joshua tree up, so then I don't see anything. Like I'm just in another world the whole flight, and then I'm watching movies and I'm playing games and I'm going through apps that I haven't had time to look at until now, and so I'm just doing the thing that I'm just, but I'm in my own world, and 4 or 5 hours just evaporates, and it's just, I will say that if you fly a lot, I don't fly a ton right now. If you fly a lot, it's worth it. It's worth the money just to have it. And the resolution is so high internally when you're watching movies. That the other thing though is you get sensitive to the fact that movies that aren't digitized well, you're like, come on, man. Like I was watching the Jackal, the old Jackal from the 90s or whatever. And they shot that on film, but the digitization, I was like, I paid for this, and it's bad. Like it's just bad digitization. But you get something like Tenet, or you get something that's newer, and it just looks so good. You can see the grain, from the film, and it's just amazing. So anyway, so to take your short question and make it a long answer. Absolutely. I thought I'd use it more when I got down there, but I just ended up hanging out with family. So it really just became a trip headset. So it was good.
And so you already had it last year at this trip, so they've already gone the rounds and seen the dinosaur and all that crazy.
No. It's funny is that I didn't. We only do it every other year to go to. I only go to North Carolina.
Okay.
My family only goes once every other year, and so they didn't see it last year. And I thought I took it down planning to show it to folks, and it just got it was busy. And that you also know
real
that
life.
There's
this thing with like sunshine and beaches and all that.
There's 30 people there from the family, so it's not like 6 people. It's all my nieces and nephews and everything else, and so there were like 32 people I think total. So you kind of also want to be careful if you take it out and that
it's gonna be a lineup.
This is gonna be all night. So I was trying to kind of find the right time and just never actually did.
All right, let's jump over to Muddy on the other side of the country and see how Muddy's doing.
Hey, good to be here. I am I am in North Carolina, but actually right on the North Carolina-Virginia border. We've got rental property on Lake Gaston, and I was telling Guy before the show, we have had Starlink. We've had this house maybe 2 years or so and been on Starlink, but about 2 months ago, Spectrum came by this rural part of the lake, and they said, okay, we've got 3 packages, and the highest package is 1 gigabyte up and 1 gigabyte down. I was like, I know what that means. Fiber. Yes, please, sign me up. So now I got fiber at the lake house. Very exciting.
Man,
Yep.
And here I am on the other end of the spectrum looking at Starlink minis and trying to decide if I want to get a Starlink mini, or I've been finding on Facebook Marketplace a couple of the high performance models of the Gen 1s for like $800. I'm like, man, what do I really want? Because part of me wants a little portable one, like Grant, when we did the Extra Hours episode from the NAB top of the hotel tower, it was just Jeff Keithley just had it in a little case, and I'm like, that's what I want, just a little Pelican. But then other people have said, hey, you'll get way more download speed, plus you'll get, I think there's multiple transponders or something in there, that so you don't get that hiccup where every couple minutes on a Zoom call where it'll jump. Because is that what's happening to you
with the high performance? Yeah, it was. And we've seen several times where they've been releasing more satellites and do the whole satellite train thing. And so I think we're at the saturation we need to be, but it would be about, every 30 minutes or so, it would drop for like 20 or 30 seconds or more. And it just happens frequently enough that it's annoying, and it's not sustainable to try and run an event that
was exactly my experience. Mine was about 40 minutes. Every 40 minutes, I'd lose it for about 30 seconds, and that was how I stopped thinking about it as an event platform.
So exactly. Yeah.
Well, and we got Australia in the house still representing for the rest of the world. What time is it there, Carl?
So it's gone about 10:30 here in the morning. It's of course Tuesday here, so it's raining outside, but the sky is turning blue a little bit, so it's quite nice.
And then pre-show, Carl and I were talking about this little tiny device that we talked about in 2 episodes ago, the Canon Pick. So if you look over his shoulder, somebody pop a question in there in the voting question, so that it's up to you guys. I mean, you drive the show. If you want to hear about Carl's little picks, well, you're going to hear about it anyway, though, because he's got them all set up. Somebody please pop a question in there, and we'll chat about it. And then let's see who else we got. That's it. This is our whole crew today. On the back end, we've got a couple of fine folks. And I wish I had a screen share to be able to show you, but we're running VisVector with a Zoom room to be able to pull people in, and we've got quite the crew back there today. It's amazing that we're able to use this kind of software to do this and play around. Essentially, I mean, we're testing this stuff out. I wanted to be able to show you guys what it looked like, because it's fascinating to see how much there is in there to make this whole thing work. I mean, it's a simple show, but it can get complicated if you want it to be complicated. And people are learning a lot. People that would have never been exposed to a $1,200 a month in the cloud system are in there today. I know Michael B, he wanted to come in, so it's his first time. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining the back end crew, and I hope you're going to learn a lot. And for those of you that are watching that want to get a taste of that, be sure to sign up in the volunteer area. And I believe that's where it's at. Isn't that where it's at, Alex? Or is there another area where they sign up if they want to?
That's the best place to sign up. Absolutely.
So it's officehours.global/volunteer.
Yep.
That's the one. Cool. So I see that you have a new toy. You want to read that first question? Do we have to go through all the formalities
from Alex
here?
Lindsay in Novato, California. I have a new toy, so I'm borrowing. I haven't bought it yet. So what this is a Voyage. This is a Dante second order ambisonic mic. So I'll pull it off carefully here. And so if I kind of cover my eyes there, you'll kind of see it here. So it's 8 mics, and which is technically, it should have one more mic, but I'm still working that out. But this is 8 mics. And what it does is it's a PoE. So I happen to have, I have a switch that's a PoE switch on my desk. So I just simply plugged it in. And then what I have is it's going via Dante. And then I open up an app that and here's what it looks like here. You can see it. So if I'm talking towards it, you can see me talking into it. And it's kind of hard. These are the raw mic inputs there, but those are eight channels there. But I also have a couple different options. So I can, of course, change the output here, but I can also go into Ambisonic and say, okay, well, I only want to do first order Ambisonic. And that's really useful because the way that, and this is doing it in the mic. So this isn't process. So what this means is that what comes out of Dante now will be 4 channels, not 8 channels, if I save it this way. And the advantage of that is that, one of the problems that I was concerned about with this mic is that we want to have ambient, but we also want to have the mics, handheld mics, going into the Scorpio and then into our stream. And 8 channels was too much because I only have 8 channels to broadcast. So this fixes that first order ambisonic issue. But check this out. I can also go into I can decide I want to do just surround. So here's 5.1, 7.1, 5.1.2, 404. So there's a couple different options here. So I can change the channel orders of what it's doing. Now this is getting processed in the mic itself before it goes out. So that's really cool because now I can set this up and I could drive this as a 5.1, essentially a 5.1 mic back out to my Scorpio and then have and still add the other 2 channels of audio that I'd like to add. So and then of course it has a pattern here that I can do as stereo. So there's so that's I believe a binaural output there of how it's going to kind of build that out for you. So a bunch of different ways of putting these together. And again, you're controlling the mic here to do that. And so we're trying to figure out, we're getting ready to hopefully somewhere in the near future be playing around with the Blackmagic camera. But I believe that part of what's going to make that work really well is the audio, and having the audio really feel like you're there. So I reached out to Voyager. I've been using and borrowing another USB version of this, which is super cool because you can plug it straight into your iPhone and just have it go. And so I've been playing with that for a little while. And so this is kind of the bigger version of that. But it's super cool mic. So anyway, we'll probably talk more about it on Wednesday. I'm going to put some sample files up later this week for people to play with. And I'm hopefully going to go out and just shoot some good footage. I actually want to test it, take the Ambisonic and test it in a big theater. And so I want to capture some birds and stuff like that, just see what it feels like. There's a lot of times people will go, well, you could just record everything in mono and put it in place. But I think that there's something about capturing it in the field that will sound different than, and so anyway, so we're going to find out. So that this is the mic. It's not cheap. It's like $3,000 mic. So I'm holding it very gingerly.
Yeah, it's cheaper than the DPA. What do you mean?
Exactly. Not by much, but yeah, it is cheap, a little less expensive and more compact to some degree. But I've been wanting to play with this thing for a while, and it's a really slick mic. So anyway, so we'll be talking about it more. I'm hopefully going to do some videos on it, and so we'll have some fun with it.
Man, that's super exciting, and it's got to be super clean if it's just pure digital. I mean, there's no analog there; it's just coming in.
I mean, it's always still the preamps that are built into it, and I haven't gotten a chance to play with them too heavily right now. But it is, you're not connected to a bunch of things, so there's not going to be a lot of self noise. And we've already seen this behind the scenes. We've kind of seen this hidden in some of the Apple stuff that we've done, so we know that we're using something that they're using, which usually is a good sign. So
Alex, you talked about first order and second order. Would you help me understand the difference between that?
Yeah, so there can be first order, second order, third order, fourth order, fifth order. It's how much resolution is in that ambisonic signal. So you have a sphere, and the ambisonic isn't really channels. It's just a sphere of energy, of audio energy that's going around. And so basically when I have a first order, I have this. It's just how much, it's 4 channels of that. 4 mics will generate the first order. Typically, 9 mics generate the second order, and I think that can go up. I mean, I don't remember what all the orders are, but I believe once you get up to something like fifth order, you're talking about, I believe, want to say 36 mics, but something like that, where you have a lot of mics, and all those mics, then the math is all put together to build that sphere back out. And then once you have that sphere, you can then drive that back down to something, to channels like 5.1 or 7.14, because
More
but it's all around it.
and more directional.
Yeah, well, just that it, you know, little things about exactly where it is, as opposed to just when you do 5.1, a 5.1 is the number of channels around you, and then the number of subwoof or LFEs, low frequency.
Right.
And then when you have another number, when you have 5.14, that means you've got how many up speakers. And so you can have a 5.12, 7.12. That means I've got 7 around. I've got 1 LFE or sub, and I've got if it's 7.12, I've got 2 up speakers to bring that up. But that can be 7.14, 5.14, 9.16. So 9.16 is really high, you know, much higher resolution, but none of them are as high resolution as really going into the ambisonic realm, you know, of what that looks like. And so, and one of the things that's really interesting that, you know, I'm glad that I've been getting into ambisonic for a while, but a lot of this relates also to how Apple's approaching audio, is the new Apple spatial audio format and the Apple positional audio codec. Those two things are very related to ambisonic. And so there's a lot that I think is going to be really interesting as we move forward, being able to take advantage of those, and especially for headsets, but also not just for headsets, but how when you're watching a live stream from Apple. And I think that what's interesting is you want to think about, you know, like there's Rec 709 and then you have Rec 2020. Rec 2020 holds all the 709 stuff. It's a bigger box that 709 fits inside of. In the same way, the Apple spatial audio format and the Apple positional audio codec is a bigger box that Atmos actually sits inside of. so it's bigger. It's a bigger box. Now there's some issues in the sense that as that conversion happens, sometimes the conversion between Atmos and the Apple spatial audio format isn't identical. so it doesn't sound exactly the same, and so there's some issues there. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I think, you know, Samsung and others are going towards other, you know, spatial formats because they're trying to save money. I believe that Apple is going towards what it's doing, not to save money, but to get more data. And they're, you know, what Apple's MO is typically to play a game that no one else can play. By creating something that's even higher resolution, it's very hard to do what Apple's doing if you don't own all the hardware. If you don't make the hardware, the operating system, you know, the subsystems, everything else, you got to make all those things, or it's very hard to support the format. And so Apple's building something that is bigger than what other people can do, most likely. So it's going to be really fun to see where we get to go with it. But it's you know, these kind of mics are super cool. And it's
amazing to see that in one handheld unit too, right? I mean, it's
yeah, I mean, and to have it be just Dante, like, you know, I have a core mic that I don't have right over. That's another second order mic, but there's a lot more self noise, and it's got this little like box that has to go connected to it, and it's got the breakouts. And then I also have an Ambio mic. I've had an Ambio mic for since it came out. And it's got these 4 big analog channels that go out, which has been really, we've used it at NAB and we've done other things with it, and it's a really cool mic. But being able to just do it with Dante is pretty nifty, you know. And then being able to say, oh, I want a 5.1 signal, or I want an ambisonic signal, or I want, you know, those are all fascinating. So it's a cool system, and we'll be talking a lot more about that as we move forward.
That is so cool. I mean, man, the world's just changing so fast, and we're going to be able to put on these. Well, so that's the other thing to talk about is you have upcoming the immersive camera as well. So how far away?
I don't have an exact date yet, but we're hoping soon. So as soon as we know, we're gonna, you know, and what we hope to do is we'll be doing some office hours, you know, after hours stuff. We'll be talking about, so we'll be doing some of that. We'll do that with this mic as well. I think that we're going to be able to fold the mic down into binaural, which means that if I push it in correctly into Zoom, if you have headphones on, you should be able to hear a surround experience, you know, inside of, even inside of Zoom. So we're going to be testing that later this week. And so it's,
and then if you have something like the Apple AirPods with spatial will you be able
You
to
should-
hear?
You should be able to hear it.
If
Yeah.
you've, what about it? Like if you record something to YouTube with the immersive camera, how does that work as far as editing and
Well,
like Resolve and then kicking it out?
We're really focused on delivering from the camera to the headset, you know, so to the Apple Vision Pro. And I think that, so we're not thinking as much about YouTube in that environment, but the Ambisonic, you know, it's kind of complicated with YouTube. YouTube actually supports Ambisonic, but only when you're in the VR mode. So if you want to do Ambisonic, you have to be in the VR mode to get that. And the same thing with, I believe, with Facebook. But we can fold this down to 5.1, you know, even out of the mic. And so I can theoretically I can still stream 5.1. So if you think about the kind of thing that we were doing before from NAB, is I can have this mic, and the mic can be via Dante connected to my Scorpio and giving me a 5.1 signal into the Scorpio. And then the Scorpio then embeds the two mic channels. So we take center channel away and put in a mic, and we take LFE away because we're no real big bass, and put the other. And so we take 3 and 4 and we pack them into those things. And then we have the other 5 channels. Now you've got 7 channels that are going out there. We can send that to post, and then however they want to reorder them from there, they can have, you know, we can keep it all that way, but we could theoretically have it all. You know, for instance, what we did is and this last NAB is we said channels 3 and 4 in this case go to the center channel. Like they just go to channel 3 when we embed them. And so basically the handheld mics are all going to come down the center channel, and then you're going to get ambient from everything else. And I think, you know, I think that there were things we learned, like the mic has to get much closer to the person. Like it really has to be where the camera is, you know, or you start to get disconnected from it pretty quickly. So that was something, but I still believe it really adds a lot. When you have the 5.1, if you go back and you have the ability to, on an Apple product, you know, and put your headphones in watching YouTube, or on a home system that has surround, there's something about that, hearing everything around us, that is,
yeah, I was
really
going to
cool.
say, wouldn't it be nice to have it mounted on the camera? Because as the camera pans, the viewer should feel that move as well, right?
And then the key is that just how much camera noise there is, and so on and so forth. So like one of the things that we noticed, like with some of the behind the scenes videos from Team 2 video or studio films, they did a little overview of the camera, and they had an ambio mic, but they had put it end over right on top of the camera. And I felt like, you know, like the chances of picking up some camera noise there is pretty high, you know, and the ambisonics are pretty sensitive. So I think that we do want to do it, but I think we want to mount it going straight up and give it a little bit of space from the camera. So you're going to see us experiment with that. And that was something that we thought about doing with the 5100, the DPA, which is such a cool mic, you know, like we just had to send it back, but it was such a cool mic. But it's a little big to do that. And so this one's a little bit more compact and potentially a little easier for us to mount in a vertical orientation. So we're going to play with that a little bit as well, with the URSA, you know, with one of our 12Ks, as well as with eventually with the bigger camera. So it's,
yeah, and it's sweet with just that one cable design. I mean, to just have
yeah,
one, got 5 cable at the bottom, that's crazy.
Well, and especially like one of the things that we really got into with the Ambio is that if you do want to have the camera further away, and if you do want to do those things, now you're talking about long analog runs. This is an Ethernet cable. You know, you can run a couple 100 feet. You know, like I mean, technically 328 feet, but I don't think it would go that far. I mean, I wouldn't try to do it that far, but let's just say 250 feet. So you could put that mic way out somewhere, and know that, and it's powering the mic as well as getting signal, as well as controlling the mic, you know, so there's a lot going on. It's probably one of the coolest mics I've gotten to play with so far. So it's pretty nifty. Man,
you're making us all want Vision Pros and these mics. All of us here are just like, man, Alex has got the cool toys.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll be, we're going to put some sample files up. One of the things I think is really important is people get a chance to play with a lot of the content. So what we're going to do is, I'm trying to find a good place to put it. We may work with you, may work with a CDN to do this, but start putting up, like, let's capture a bunch of files that capture some stuff so that people can have them, download it, play with it. And because I think that getting your hands on it, and so as soon as we get this camera, one of the things we want to do is shoot relatively short clips of some of the stuff, because this stuff turns into terabytes really fast, like but shoot, a small 100 gig, 500 gig file that
So
people
what
can
would
download.
that look like to take folks into after hours? Like, how could you envision rigging this up so that we come along in the journey and learn a few things?
When we start shooting with it, we want to do a third-party camera, just a camera off to one side, so you can kind of see us working and see what's looking at it. We'll probably have a screen that we're showing that's the the hemispheres. I think we can actually share. I think we're going to be able to. And this is the part we're testing this week. Actually, we should be able to, like, we can be looking at the signal, but also in the headset, but sharing that with an Apple TV, and so that you can see it. So, like, we're going to kind of work on ways for you to see what we're seeing while we're working. And then the other thing that we want to do is be ready so that whenever Resolve is released to the, as a public beta, that we can put out a bunch of files. Like, here's a bunch of files for y'all to play with, because that's going to be the thing. Not a lot of people are going to have the camera, and a lot of people that have the cameras aren't going to shoot stuff. They can just release the files. So we're going to release everybody on the files so that we can, and some of the stuff we want to get aggressive about. My brother just got off a film or TV show. He was just working on a TV show for the last 4 months, and he has a Trinity rig. It's really important because the Trinity rig has its own self-leveler. So a Trinity rig is, if you go back and look at one of the old office hours, there is a whole second hour with my brother talking about the Trinity. But basically what it means is that he's got a gimbal like you'd have for a Ronin, except sitting on top of a Steadicam. so it lets him do crazy shots. There's not that many of them out there. And so but we're going to put the camera on there, because we saw some of the shots from like Metallica where the camera follows behind somebody, and it's just stuff that I didn't think you should be able to do on a headset. Like, it would make you sick, and it didn't. So we want to try it ourselves, and so, and I have an idea of, I kind of know where we're going to see if this might be a little crazy, but we know where Endor is. It's up here, right? Like where Endor was when they shot the speeders, and so there's been some discussion about trying to recreate little bits of that or something like that, where you can sit in the thing. So we're gonna at least try to find, we'll see how that, if it's worth it. A lot of stuff we're gonna test is gonna crash. Like, it's not gonna work. Like, it's not gonna be good, but some of it might be kind of cool.
$30,000 crash camera.
Well, no, I don't mean that. We're not going to crash it. I mean, it just won't work. It won't be very good. Like, it won't be as good as we think. But in my head, the idea that you could get into, I mean, it might make a lot of people sick, but in my head, feeling like you're flying through Endor on a speeder, we think that what will make it work is that if we put the graphic of the speeder, if we composite it in front of you, so that you have a source of something, a fixed source that isn't just opened, it may feel okay, but we don't know yet. So.
Plus, you remember Endor was shot at whatever frame rate and then sped up to 24,
which gives us tons of frames. So we should be able to deliver it
way higher than like 80 or 90. So you can shoot
it's
at 90.
Be a 90 frame. Well, we can shoot it.
You could go right up to
Yeah. So the idea is that we can,
so many frames.
Yeah. So it could be playing with it is going to be.
Or
fun.
You could. I guess the Vision Pro is limited to 90, isn't it? As far as what it can play, so I guess you could shoot at 30, then times by 3, because you do want to give the speeder effect. Yeah,
exactly. So we'll see what happens. That's one of we have some artists that we want to shoot. We've got some other things to visit. Like, we just have all these things. I only get, if I get the camera, only out for a little while, so I'm going to try to make the most of it.
Road trip to Northern California.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into that first question, or second question. You got the floor for that first. That's the nice thing about extra hours. We could chew on stuff. We're 20-something minutes into the show, and we got our taste of the future.
Exactly. Our next question is from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri, and Vic asks, is it okay to use two lights with close but different CRI ratings?
Carl.
Yeah, so there is a big push at the moment for lights to say they have a color space, which is kind of interesting, but it's kind of not correct in a way, because technically the sun has the ultimate color space, and so does a black body radiator, like tungsten lighting. So CRI was created back in the 30s, and manufacturers lean on that because it's very easy to make a light that has a high CRI rating that only uses the first 8 chips in the CRI as well. So CRI was designed to make sure that certain Art Deco stuff back in the 30s looked correct under electric lighting. So electric lighting was becoming the main source of lighting inside spaces, homes and businesses. And so with electronic lighting, depending on what type of electronic lighting, because it was a free-for-all back in before the Second World War as far as the technology for electronic lighting, they gave renderings very different of colors. So the CRI was brought in to make sure that if you wanted to show off artwork, or if you wanted to show off corporate stuff that had a particular color set, then you would want to make sure your CRI rating met a certain level. So that's why in the 1930s, your electronic lighting meet these color standards. Fast forward to the 1970s, they update it for essentially, because it's the 1970s, and then fast forward again, and they make even tighter spec in the 1990s. But that's where it ends. In the 1960s and 70s, they came out with TLCI, which is Television Lighting Color Index. This is kind of one that's better one to look at if you want to look at the quality. But truly, if you want to know how good a light truly is, it's SSI. How close is this light to the sun? And how close is this light to a black body radiator, tungsten light? And that's another word for that. Now, the sun and tungsten light are different because the sun has to go through the atmosphere. The atmosphere does absorb certain frequencies, like ultraviolet and some infrared. So it does have a little bit different than tungsten lighting, which doesn't have to go through the atmosphere. But don't worry too much. As long as it's above, well, if it's hitting a subject and that subject is color critical, so this is for still life, for advertising, and for people, but people are a little bit forgiving because we have makeup. So I reckon above 90 would be good for hitting a face. Most lights are 95 now, so we don't have to worry about that. Star Wars Episode 7 was shot with CRI of 80. So people who think that you need high, you don't. Star Wars Episode 7 was shot with CRI of 80. So don't think you need high CRI to make big stuff. They had a mixed lighting in that show, so they had LED and HMI, so they had mixed. HMI has a very high CRI, of course. But yeah, don't worry too much. Most of them are going to have above 95. If it says 95, 96, 97, 98, that doesn't matter. It's not as critical as like white balance on a camera. That's kind of where you want to get to. But anything above 95 is perfectly fine for CRI. If you want to look into more details into this, a recommendation I had, which was Gaffer and Gear. Gaffer and Gear will go through all of these specs in great detail for every light pretty much that's used on productions, music videos, commercials. He's done them for the last few years, so he goes into real depth on these. RGB lights generally have a greater CRI than bicolor lights. That's true for probably the last 5 years. That's starting to change now. So technology marches on. The big 3 companies, so this is Nanlite, Aperture, and Godox. They're the ones pushing the envelope as right to the edge. They're all pushing each other, which is great because the technology is getting better. So any modern light that's current, that has a 95 or 96, that's fine, no problem. You can mix them. The background lights, that if it's not hitting the subject, they can be anything. They can just be RGB lights, which we call like DJ lights or disco lights. So those can, because they're not hitting a subject that matters. So they're lighting up a wall, and actually they will have sometimes higher saturation. So that's really important how they actually work as far as background. I have some RGB lights here of my own that I don't use in the show, but I actually have 2 sets. I have a very powerful set and a less powerful set that run off batteries. And they don't have any white chips. So there's no RGB WW. Well, one of them does, but it's not really a good W. But yeah, so these are really good lights for backgrounds, and they'll have a CRI of like, technically 7. I don't know, it's terrible CRI. But yeah, so if your CRI is above 95, don't worry about brands, don't worry about mixing them, that's perfectly fine. CRI of 95, but it's only when you get to like really critical, like shooting a commercial for Tiffany. That's probably a good example, because a Tiffany blue has to look like Tiffany blue, and Coca-Cola red has to look like... Now, this more to do with camera than it does with lighting. If your lighting's above CRI of 95, then it's more that the camera will be the... different brands of camera will have way more effect than different brands of lighting that have like, a 96 versus a 97, let's say. But yeah, don't worry too much as long as they're above 95.
Have you noticed, Carl, that if you have 2 different lights, like what Vic's talking about, that are maybe like you have an iCan that's 90, but then you have like some old school light that you're like, hey, I got it for free or cheap, or I've had it around, and now this one's like a 70, something like terrible green cast and everything like that. Have you had those issues?
Yes. So you go into like a conference center, and the conference center will have what I call DJ lights. So these are RGBW lights.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we've all come across them, and you get this kind of really weird whitey purpley kind of, that's the best white you can get out of it. So if you have those lights and that's all you've got to work with, then you'll need to use a white so essentially a correct white card. So this is X-Rite or Color Bright. They make a white card. You need to put that, you know, if it's someone talking, put that where they're talking, put on a little stand, get all your cameras, get your cameras probably 2 or 3 meters away, zoom into them, and then you want to do a custom white balance, not auto white balance, it's custom white balance. And that's the only way you can really, truly make it. What's going to happen is their skin tone will look good, but the logos and the marketing material behind them might be slightly off color because the lighting is really low CRI. So if they have saturated, like a Coca-Cola or a Tiffany will look a little bit weird under that, but their skin tone will look relatively good. But yeah, if you don't want to mix what I call DJ lights with what I call maybe high CRI lights, which are used in photo and video work. So yeah, that's exactly right what Guy said. So if you do have a mixture of those, then have your low CRI lights, what I call DJ lights, have them as a background only or as a hair light. If they're okay with a hair light, you just don't want them as your frontal fill. So your key and fill need to be high CRI, which means you have to bring at least 2 lights to your, well, it depends if you're doing an interview. 2 of your lights have to be high CRI, everything else can be low CRI. And if you rock up and you have to deal with what you have to deal with, just turn off all their lights, you know. Don't use their lights. Bring your own lights. 3 lights is better because it means you can get a key, a fill, and something to light up the background or something to light up the hair or, you know, something to throw interest. That 3rd light doesn't have to be high CRI, but as I said, like RGB lights now, RGB WW lights, or all these other types of lights that have multiple colors in them. So there's Blair lights and there's all this other stuff that have a good CRI color index. They're relatively cheap, but if you're walking to a venue and you have to use the venue lights because you're simply just capturing something, you know, you're capturing an event, and the event, you have to use the events lights, and they have what we call DJ lights. You're going to have to do the best you can. If you can bring your own lights, simply spot them at, let's say, a lectern, spot them at the lectern. So that way, the person who's speaking at the lectern will be perfect color. Everything else will be weird.
And then I know that you do a lot of photography, Carl. When you have this color that you need to fix and post, are you shooting in JPEGs or RAW? And if you shoot in RAW, can you kind of piece this back together? So I think Vic's shooting for video. And so I know that if we have like an H.265 or really low bandwidth codec that didn't pick up, you know, even full 10-bit color, maybe 8-bit color. Can you talk a little bit about what to do?
So the way to do that, so if I have to shoot, let's say I shoot RAW, and if I get to this situation, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get to that lighting board, and I'm going to do a custom mix of the RGBW lights to get it as close to like a good white possible. But essentially, I'm going to put them all up full. The reason why is if I put them all up full, I'm going to have a lot of color information there. It doesn't matter if it's kind of wrong, as long as it looks good in the room. It doesn't look weird in the room. But the more color I throw in there, the more color that's going to hit the sensor, the more I can tweak that with RAW. Now, video, you're right. So if you're shooting JPEG or you're shooting H.264, H.265, this is where you'll need to use a custom white balance, not an auto white balance. Important difference. Custom white balance, and there is a procedure to go through this. Sony and Canon, it's a little bit different how they do it, but essentially you're going to put them at a white target. You want to fill the entire screen with the white target, and then do your custom white balance for each camera that you're using on the same target at the same time, because the sun will change if you have that natural light coming into the room as well as your artificial light. So you need to do all these 3 roughly at the same time. Be aware that if you have sun coming in and out of clouds, that can really throw this off. So just be aware of that. If you're doing records, it's not a problem, but yeah, so you need to do a custom white balance if you have tricky lighting. If you have the ability to shoot like 10-bit log or RAW, less of a issue. But 10-bit log is still baked in. It's just there's more, and there's, you know, it's more wide and more depth because of the log and the 10-bit, but it is still baked in. It's just more to play with. And RAW technically is also baked in, because RAW, the sensor is 16-bit, but the RAW recordings are 12-bit. So just remember that it is technically slightly baked in. You know, it's still a bit doughy, but it's it's not a biscuit yet, but it's still quite doughy. But just remember that it's so RAW is a lot more flexibility than 10-bit. But it's not absolute RAW. There's only a couple of cameras in the world that have ever shot video absolute RAW, like Canon C700 and maybe the Arri.
That helps Vic out. It may have given him a lot to chew on, but it's better to get it right from the get-go. If you can't avoid it, then just match
anything above 95 is good, Vic.
Yep. And remember, sunlight and daylight is 100, and so is tungsten. So those are both 100. So out of a score of 0 to 100, natural daylight is 100, and it's just when you start getting into some of these cheap
And
lights, that
so
you
it's
start running
flash. So for
So it's
photographers
flash.
out there, flash photography is also 100.
Yep. And if you want to get a meter, you can get a meter like this that'll measure that. This is like, it's super expensive though to be able to measure that and make it so that you know for sure with total accuracy. Let's move on to that next question.
Next question is from Michael Boitnott in Richmond, Virginia. And Michael asks, been watching Lego Masters US. This season, they use some tiny cameras in the corner of each table. They use them and they look terrible. Why keep them?
Carl.
So I looked a little bit of clip on this. It looks like they're using just lipstick cameras. So lipstick cameras, usually they're 1080. Sony made some nice ones back in the day, but you know, we're talking like these were HDV record cameras. So yeah, lipstick cameras do have a little bit of problem. I think it'd be much better just to throw up an iPhone. I think an iPhone would get much better quality than any lipstick camera made 10, 15 years ago. But it's got to do with not being too obtrusive. Like obviously you could put up a Blackmagic Micro, would be quite nice, but maybe that's just too big. And especially with Lego, they maybe need to get deep focus at macro levels. So that's a whole other thing. So now, actually, the iPhone can do this. So with its ultra-wide-angle lens on the iPhone 13 and above, it does have macro ability on the ultra-wide-angle to do this, to do ultra-wide and have quite a bit of depth. But yeah, they may want depth of field close. So there may be a lot of stipulations, and they may the place they're renting the cameras from may only have this as their option. So you have to think about that as well, because we are talking production. There's limitation to what a rental house will have for these, because the Fraser optical system, which is what's been used forever since the 90s, it's won multiple Academy Awards. That's how you do it. So we all know how you do it. But the Fraser optical system lens system is very expensive. It's made by Panavision. You can only rent it. So if that's how you want to go, that's the way. Probe lenses now, you can get Lauer probe lenses again. But again, these are huge. So if you want something that's not obstructive on the corner of the table, then a lick-stick camera from 10 years ago, you could do a GoPro technically, I guess. You could just chuck a GoPro in there, have a live feed coming out of it. That's another way of doing it. Or you could strip down a GoPro. A lot of people do this. They'll take GoPros, disassemble them, and just want the optical and the sensor and kind of HDMI and put it into their own housing. So essentially creating their own lipstick camera out of a GoPro. Or other brand, there's other brands that do, like DJI have their own action cam as well. But yeah, so it depends. But really what it's going to come down to is what does the rental house have for this particular production? That's what it always comes down to generally.
Alex?
Yeah, and for a show with a budget, a lot of times these cameras aren't super expensive. The main thing is that a lot of production folks are going to want to have control of that camera, so they're going to want something that has remote control access. So GoPros and some of the action cameras may not fit what the production wants as far as what they can do there. But I would say that if someone asked me to do it, I'd probably end up using the Blackmagic Micro, the Micro Studios. I've owned so many. It's pretty, that those are just the perfect little camera, because now even there you may want to get to a point where I want to zoom in or zoom out. Now I'm going to use cameras that may not be quite as high quality. The other thing is that these may be webcams that are subtle product placement. So I couldn't quite make them out, but they did look like they were in some cases like webcams almost. And so they may be someone who sponsored the show to put the cameras into to try to prove that out.
Buddy.
I was, as I was looking at this question, I pulled it up on Hulu and was trying to find some spots for this that showed the camera, but then also showed some footage. And I noticed a couple of different ways that they were using the footage would be kind of back to back with another camera shot. So you'd have kind of a higher resolution shot from one of the pedestal cams that they were using, but then showing them build or showing them kind of move the build. The thing about these other rigs is you've got to be pointing where the action is, but these desktop rigs are always capturing the action at the desktop, right? So it's if something happened and you weren't pointing a camera at it, you always have this kind of desktop camera that you can go to. So it's one of those shots that's kind of always there for editing. The other thing I noticed is I was kind of pausing to try and take a screenshot of that is that I noticed the resolution, at least the screen I was watching it on, the resolution wasn't as bad as I was expecting looking at the question, but I did notice the motion blur was kind of worse blur than what some of the other, better high resolution cameras were. So for what it's worth, that may be part of what you're experiencing as kind of the cameras look terrible. When I paused it and the person wasn't moving, it actually looked pretty crisp, but as they were moving, I was kind of seeing more motion blur, and that may lead to it as well.
Yeah, I was just looking at that shot as well. One of them that just, you could definitely tell that the color saturation and whatnot's not there. But yeah, it's with production, it's glass and, big sensors, and that's the game, In fact, I get what you're saying though, Muddy. I know I've TD'd on shows with you, so I know that you like to have that safety shot too. It's like, where can I fall back if somebody cuts in front of my shot? I like having a stable wide shot that I can just go to, and it's always there. So even if it is not the prettiest picture, it's nice to have that fail safe. Let's jump into the next question.
Next question is from Roz McNulty in Vancouver, and Roz asks, what are Carl's new toys?
Carl?
So over my right shoulder here, we can see there's 4 of them set up. I've just got them set up. There's a particular little bracket there. And so what this is, these are, and Guy has one himself, he's got the white one. So what these are is the Canon Pick. So the Canon Pick is a unique kind of little camera. I kind of consider it photography first, video second. It doesn't really have a live output. So it does have a webcam function, but the webcam function is really showing you the preview. So the preview is kind of what you're going to see on the iPhone when you can control it. So to talk about kind of some of its features, so I'll just bring up the brochure here so we can go through. So it does have voice control, which is pretty cool. Actually, I can do that now if I come back to me. So the voice, if I say, hello, Pick, find others. So there we go. We can actually see them. They'll spin around 340 degrees, and they're looking for other people. Essentially, they're pointing forward at the moment because they can see everyone on Zoom, and they're taking photographs of the faces on Zoom. So it has facial recognition. It also has tracking, so it can track a face as well. So which is pretty cool in itself. This is kind of the situation where they envision the camera being used is at an event where you don't want to miss the moments at the event because you're the photographer. So the photographer and the family sometimes misses being part of the event because they're too busy taking photographs. And as a professional photographer, I know exactly what they mean because that's my job. So essentially you can put this camera on a table, on a stand. I have a handful of different types of stands for it, and it'll just take pictures automatically. You can set it to take a lot of photos or less photos. You can tell it to take video as well as photos. But one of the really important things that this has is because it has facial recognition, you can actually register people. So by registering people, it'll actually take, and that's what we're kind of seeing on the bottom left here, it knows faces, so you can actually say, take more photographs of this person. So a good example would be if it's a birthday party of the birthday person. So if it's their birthday, you can say, okay, take more photographs of this person, and it will just do that. It'll take more photographs of them with others. So 2s and 3 shots, but always have one of them in there. So it's quite interesting in the AI. It has voice commands. So the voice commands are really cool as well because, as I just showed, I can find others means find other faces because it's been shooting all of us on Zoom at the moment. It does have record a video. You can tell it to record a video. It will record for 2 minutes. There is an app which is showing here on the right. So the app turns this into a full PTZ camera. So with the app, you actually get pan, tilt, zoom, you get tracking. It does have an optical zoom, 3 times optical zoom. You have tracking as well, so it will track a face. But the other thing that gets really interesting in here is if you do a selfie on a selfie stick. Because it has tracking and it has its own PTZ, don't worry about the Z too much, but so it will actually stabilize. So it doesn't have optical stabilization or electronic stabilization. It actually has mechanical stabilization. The camera essentially has a quarter twin on the bottom, and the best way to think about this is how a pigeon's head moves or a chicken head's move if you move the body of a chicken or a pigeon. That's exactly how this works. So you can move the body of this camera, but the head will stay perfectly focused on what it is. it doesn't matter if you move the camera left, right, up, down on like a small monopod, the camera will stay pointed at whatever it's tracking, as long as it's within the tracking realm. And the tracking realm for this is 5 meters. 5 meters, it will track faces and it will track subjects. So what it doesn't show in this picture, you can actually pick a subject like a car, tap on it, it'll put a square box around the car, not a circle will be face, squares for objects, and it will track that object. A really good example I've seen of this is a kite. So someone pointed this at a kite in the sky, touched on the kite, it put a square box around the kite, and then the camera, just on a little tripod, just tracked the kite, fully zoomed in the whole time, which is, if you know the dynamics of a kite, this is how fast it is. Now, the motors they're using inside these cameras, I'll come back to me, so you can see the cameras here just turning on by themselves. The motors they use are the autofocus motors from L-series lenses. So these are USM motors for the pan and a USM motor for the tilt. So they're very fast, they're very quiet. They're really fast if you want them to be really fast, but you won't see them. Usually they'll track quite slowly. But if you have it in tracking mode, essentially tracking yourself for a selfie, you'll see them operate really fast because you can move like a selfie stick around and it will track your head regardless. So it is quite amazing, but there's a lot to them. There's a lot you'll discover if you purchase one. At the moment, they're $200 from B&H and Amazon, I believe, in US dollars. They're down from $500. You want to make sure you update the firmware if you get them. So it's important that you update the firmware because a lot of new features have come out since. You can operate the camera without an app. So there is kind of like a standalone mode where you can operate as a photography camera or video camera using the buttons on the camera itself, no app required. And also it has internal, so it has SSD inside. So that's how it records. It's really a record camera. So we need to really specify that. It's 100%, well, it's 99% a record camera. And there is a Windows application that will give you the live view out, but the live view is the same view essentially that you get in the iPhone app. So, which means it may be 15 frames a second. So it was an afterthought. It wasn't a feature because they knew they couldn't get video out. It does not have any USB out. The USB is only used to charge, full stop. All firmware updates are done via either you put them onto the card, put the firmware update in the card and put the card in, or it's done over Wi-Fi. So this camera is Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. The Bluetooth part is a handshake, so very similar to how AirPlay works. So the Bluetooth does a handshake between your iPhone or iPad and the device. And once you've done the handshake, then it will go on to Wi-Fi. And all the rest will be done by Wi-Fi. It creates its own network. So it creates its own Wi-Fi network internally. And the software that runs in this is essentially a cut-down version of the paid-for software that you get in like the N300 and the N500 from Canon. So this is the auto tracking.
That's just crazy that cameras, because what's an N300 cost? Those are like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so it's what, 3,000? Technically the N100 is 2,000, so the N100 can also do the tracking software. And then of course you get up to like the N700 in the series, and that's like 9,000, I think, 8,000, 9,000. But the add-on software is 1,200 alone. So if you want to buy the software, so this will do correct headroom.
Man, I wish I could have got the webcam to work right, because over wireless it was just really choppy. So that's the only drag, is that I wanted to use it as a video source. So like I was backstage at an event this last week, and in the green room I wanted to see who was about to come up on stage or who had entered the green room, and so I was going to bring this just to stick it back there and have like a little Wi-Fi connection just to be able to peep back there and see who was up next. So in that case, for how small it is, it deserves a nice place in my backpack just to pull out just in case. So cool device. I appreciate you turning me on to it.
It is a great device.
Roz, thanks for the question. Let's jump to the next one.
Next question is from Paul Kovacs in Eckhart in Indiana. And Paul asks, I'm seeing the Blackmagic URSA immersive camera unboxing out in the wild on YouTube. Question for Alex: how much drool keeps getting all over his controls on his desk?
Alex,
I'm getting pretty excited. It's pretty cool to see it finally getting out into the wild and having people actually play with it. And so hopefully we'll have one and we'll be able to talk about it pretty soon. But pretty excited to see what happens. I think that this camera is going to, I think, change a lot of things about, what can be done, for the headset. And I think when more people have access to the camera and start generating more content, I think it's going to get pretty interesting. So looking forward to it.
So how close are you to getting one? Like,
don't know. I don't want to jinx it soon. so we're hoping soon. We're just we're talking to folks and trying to figure it out. So hopefully we'll have more information later this week, where we'll have a pretty good idea of when we might be able to get a test flight on it.
Stay tuned,
so stay
folks.
tuned. Yeah, it should be exciting.
Next question.
Next question is from Ian Mora in Wellington. And Ian asks, how can I run Waves plus loudness meter standalone to monitor real-time mic input to Zoom on a Mac M4? Go
ahead, Carl.
So if you want to monitor your loudness into Zoom, then the audio meter from Waves is one you're talking about, the loudness meter from Waves, needs to be a participant in Zoom. So it needs to be one of the participants. So you'd need to run this on a separate computer or have two instances running on one computer of Zoom. So because it wants to hear the Zoom meeting, the whole conversation. That's how we do it here. So we actually have one of the participants is a loudness meter, and it hears everyone, but it hears how everyone sounds in Zoom, not in their own digital mixer or in their own audio interface or in their own computer, because it may change in Zoom. So that's why, as long as you're a participant, and then as long as you point the audio from the Zoom meeting at your meters, you can do this in a DAW, so you can just pump, or you can use this loop back, all those kind of things will have the ability to point at a standalone app or at a DAW that's running the meters. That's not a problem. And then point it, you want to make sure that all your levels in those, if you're using a DAW, is set to 0. So sometimes you want to use something from, Loopback is a good example. Audio Hijack is another one that can run plugins as well. So you can run plugins in these, and so you can actually just point audio straight at the plugin, and it will show you, the plugin, of course. But you can't run it on your own computer, because that's just going to capture your audio before it gets sent to Zoom and hits a reflector and does all its things, because it's more the echo cancellation and all the processing Zoom doing on their side. So as long as you have a computer or a separate instance of Zoom running on a computer, and then you point that instance, the sound audio from that instance, from that meeting essentially, at your audio meters, that's how you will know. And that's how we do it here in Office Hours. We actually have a standalone computer that has audio meters running, and it's listening to everyone in the meeting, listen to our voices, and we can look at that instance, the video feed from that instance, and it gives us a live feedback of our loudness in the Zoom meeting, not in our audio interface or in our computer, essentially.
Next question.
Next question is from Roz McNulty in Vancouver, and Roz asks, what is a Red V-Raptor X camera, and how would it work with spatial filming?
I have a feeling you're going to say you need two. Go ahead, Alex.
So this is what a lot of people have been using, and there's a couple things. There's a Red Connect Red Connect, I can't think of the name precisely, but the Red Connect back that allows you to take IP out of it basically and get very high frame rates, as well as at 8K. So you can do 8K 120 out of the back of the camera, which was kind of designed, and really the Red's the only one doing it. So one of the big advantages of the Red, the disadvantage is the resolution is not as high as the Blackmagic camera that's out there. When you're talking about it, it can give you 4K per eye, but it's not going to be the 8K per eye, but it can do the higher frame rate, and it can do it live. So really, if you want
what
a 4K,
lens do you got to put on that? Is it like that Canon R5?
You can put the Canon R. Yeah, you can put the
lens,
R5. Yeah, that lens on it. There's a couple other more testy lenses that have been used for that, but the R5 is a pretty common one for that. It does have an interchangeable lens that you can put onto it, and it is, again, what it allows for is 120 frames per second, 4K per eye stream, and so and it can do that live if you can process it. So again, the problem that we have with the Blackmagic camera is that you can get 8K per eye, but you can't get, and you can get 90 frames a second, but you can't do that live out of the camera right now because it's just too much data. So and so this one's built for that. So that's how it impacts spatial, is that if we see live streaming this year, still probably a pretty high probability that it's a Red camera, doing that right now, while the highest quality video is most likely the Blackmagic.
So you don't need two. All right, Carl.
Well, you might need one of each, yeah. So, but you don't need two of them to do left and right eye. Absolutely.
Okay. Carl.
So what Alex was saying is with the the camera. So this is it here. So this is the Red Raptor with the Canon, because it's an RF mount. The Red is an RF mount. It's the only camera outside of Canon's ecosystem that has the RF mount. So yeah, so this is the 180 VR lens on the Red, and as Alex said, you can do a record, but of course the Red can actually take that 8K or 4K per eye in this case, live out, and you can process it however you want. You're going to need some pretty serious power to do it live, but it is possible. As Alex said, it is possible with this camera to do 4K per eye at, I believe, 60 frames per second. I'm pretty sure with this one, maybe 120. Actually,
I think
maybe
you can do 120. Yeah,
120. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can do 120. Would technically be 4K per eye, 120, because it can do 8K for the full sensor. So this solution is out, and people have been testing it. This is in a record setup, as you're seeing here, because it doesn't have the back on it that does the output. But yeah, there is a great solution there. I think it'd be about the same price, to be honest, as Blackmagic solution, because that particular camera that can do that is around $30,000 when you kit it out with all the record and everything, and the back alone. Actually, the back alone would, if you want to do it live, that'll chuck on another $15,000. So you'd be closer to $50,000 once you add on the lens, compared to what Blackmagic's offering, which is a record only at the moment, which is around $30,000.
Nice. All right. Hopefully that answers your question, Roz. And now we're going to go from the Q&A over to our content picks. So each of the panelists has something maybe over the last week or a couple weeks that they've chosen that they've watched. And Alex, you want to kick us off? You got to jump out at 7?
Yeah. I skipped over the show for a while and then came back to it, and it's on Netflix, called The Diplomat. It's actually pretty good. I mean, it was one of those things, like I had to watch the first one a couple of times. We kept on going back to it. I don't know if I really, but it's with Kerry Russell, and she's a diplomat in the UK, and things get complicated, as diplomacy often does. And it's just, it keeps on getting more complicated. and it's just, my wife and I are kind of hooked on it now. So if you're looking for a good show that actually has a pretty good narrative and is, feels real, and they're doing, a lot of the stuff, it's worth checking out. So it's called The Diplomat, and it's on Netflix.
Nice. Also on Netflix. It's not my pick, but I'm going to try to throw in a second one for you there. That Amy Bradley is missing. Did you happen to catch Fenwick?
I haven't seen it yet, but evidently Mr. Fenwick was our own Chris Fenwick is in the show, and he's I don't think he's vouching for the accuracy of or the precision of the interview, and of course he did the classic, recorded his interview with another video camera while he was being interviewed. So the delta between the two is interesting.
Yeah, it's worth watching. All right, let's jump over to Mike.
All right, I've got another Netflix show. It's a limited series. It's just 8 episodes, and I may not be the first to mention this, but it's called The Residents. And it's an interesting, quirky little show where there's a eccentric detective solving a mystery, and it's just kind of one of those ones that I haven't found myself sitting down and binging a lot of series, and this was one that I watched it in a day and a half, kind of a thing. It was gripping enough to just kind of keep watching.
Did you binge watch that? 8?
Yeah, 8 episodes, and they're like, I don't know, I don't think they're an hour, but it feels like they're more than a half hour, but probably 45 minutes or something like that. And but it was just kept me guessing enough that they don't reveal it's a whodunit, murder in the White House, and there's kind of funny, goofy eccentric detective who has unconventional methods, and it's not until the very end that it reveals it. And there's some, it kept me. The fact that I continued to watch them one after another is a sign, because I don't do that a lot. So anyway, for what it's worth, fun little show on Netflix called The Residents.
Cool, thank you, Carl.
So my one is a YouTube channel. So this is based on art. So it's called Great Art Explained. So essentially, this channel's been around for a few years now, and so the person who does this. He does have a Q&A. He has done one Q&A where he speaks about his background and how he knows all about these works of art. But essentially, he was essentially you'll have people who can afford to spend 3 months in Europe on holiday. They will have, so people who can live, or whose parents live in Billionaires Row, let's say in Manhattan. And so essentially they will have high school or college age kids with them. And so while they're there, they do want to get the Western culture, the Western civilization experience. And this is through the great artworks that are in Europe and can only be found in Europe. And so this person, what they did, they were a teacher, and they also studied art history, but they were asked, hey, we're going to be in Europe for 3 months, and we're going to be going around, this is by a family. We got a couple of kids. Can you talk about the artwork? Because, you're a subject matter expert. Can you actually go to the actual artwork itself, stand in front of the original artwork, and tell my kids about the artwork rather than them reading it from a book or getting it from
Ooh, we need that immersive camera for this with the spatial audio.
So he was essentially, consider it like a personal tutor for art, but he would do these personal tuitions in front of the Mona Lisa, in front of the Last Supper.
Oh, that's awesome.
With 1 or 2 people from a family that may be wealthy because they can afford him. And so he did this, and he simply just mapped out his itinerary to time in with our holiday in Europe. Most of his customers were from the United States, and they were coming to do the great European holiday with their kids before their kids went off to college and did their own lives. And so that's how he did this, and he did that for quite a few years. And then he stopped doing that because he became a nomad in Europe. He lives in the UK. He became a nomad and he just wanted to settle down. So, but he still wanted to talk about the artwork. So he made a YouTube channel, and he only releases a video, maybe 8 to 10 videos a year. They're very in depth. He essentially, because he has spoken about these works of art while standing at these works of art for years, he knows very deeply about the history of them, because the amount he was getting paid to do this was quite substantial, that it would keep his, essentially he would get his entire living from doing a few months worth of work a year for this. So he had to know everything there was about it. And the feedback he got from his customers was, this was great. My kid is now doing an elective in college on art history, yada, yada. So this is kind of the interesting part, but he does go into quite a lot of details on some of the great artworks and sculptures as well. And because of his job, because he had to go from city to city, generally during the summertime, to follow these families or just line up with their itineraries to give these tutorials, he also got to know the cities very well. And he got to know the art scene and the art history of the cities. So he also has a whole other series, which he does here, which is Great Cities Explained. Great Art Cities. So that's this one here. So Great Art Cities Explains is kind of interesting. He talks about cities and the art that they present, and how their art changed in the city, how people came to the city for art, and how people changed, how the city had changed because of art. So there is a whole other aspect to his channel, which is also based on maybe geography or art-based. So that's another way.
And this is just free on YouTube, huh?
Yeah, free on YouTube, and he's been doing it for years. Very high quality.
Crazy.
He does have help now, which is great as far as editorial. It was all himself at the beginning, but now he does have enough revenue stream coming in from this. You can see by his popular videos, so we're talking in the millions, and it's just him talking about the artworks. So, and he usually averages.
That's a great find, because I think back to my Encyclopedia Britannicas that I, dog-eared the heck out of these pages, just going through them all the time. And those things cost a couple $100, or my grandfather's. I got them in the early 80s. And so to see what you're showing here, that's just free. Like, you could buy a $60 Kindle tablet and just immerse yourself in that for days, and be around the world. Yeah, that's
and all different subjects too. So you can pick like art you're interested in. You can pick like there's kind of scandalous art, like art that very famous pieces that you don't realize they're actually depicting someone having an affair. But well, that's kind of topical for at the moment on the internet, of course. But yeah, it's quite, well, what we consider scandalous now would not be considered scandalous then. But an artwork that was changed. So there was artwork that was done, and then later on it's been changed, and that he can show via essentially X-ray and via essentially different wavelengths. We can actually look into the artwork and how it was before it was changed. And sometimes it was changed by the artist, sometimes it was changed by the person who bought the artwork. They had to change themselves. Sometimes it's restoration. and some artwork has changed, unfortunately, a little bit in restoration to repair it. This is maybe a few hundred years ago, repairing something a few hundred years ago. Greatly, so that one of the good things is the Mona Lisa has not suffered that. So the Mona Lisa was put into essentially a bath, so a bathroom by Napoleon, and he had it hanging in the bathroom, so it did get a bit steamy. And it made the wood crack, but no one tried to fix it, so they've kind of left it as it is, so it's quite nice. But yeah, so
patina.
He goes to all these
they call
artworks.
that patina.
Well, yeah, patina for the Mona Lisa, yeah. But yeah, so you can pick like sculpture and artwork, artists as well. He does talk about the artist. He does talk about the effects of the artist and their contemporaries, so other artists like, obviously Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael. Leonardo was a little bit older at this time. He was more the statesman, but Michelangelo would have been middle-aged, probably late 30s, and Raphael was a young kid. So for people who have watched Ninja Turtles, there you go. Donatello is much older, by the way, so Donatello predates Leonardo. So he'd be the oldest out of the Ninja Turtles. But yeah, so he really does go into it. So I suggest pick one artwork you kind of are interested in or you know a little bit about, watch it, and then you'll understand the depth that he goes into. And then there is another contemporary channel that he does collaborate with a little bit called The Canvas. And so The Canvas has a little bit of a different spin on it, more from an artist point of view rather than a historian point of view. And so those two channels back to back, but I prefer the art history because it talks a lot about the world it was made in and why this artwork was made. Whereas The Canvas is more about technique and that kind of more, if you're an artist, you'll understand that. But yeah,
cool.
Great channel.
Great find. Thanks for sharing. And for mine, to wrap it up, I found this book through Audible. I'm a huge subscriber, have tons and tons of books, but this one I listened to the preview and just got hooked. So it's called Empire of AI, Dreams and Nightmares in Sam Altman's OpenAI. It's by Karen Howe, and she was actually a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and was back investigating this stuff way back. I believe it started about 2016 or so. So she really got in deep, and this is a long book. It's not a short little thing where you're just going to get through it. I think even at the fast speed I was listening to it is over 15 hours. So it's like 16, 17 hours or something like that. So it's a lot. And it helped set the record straight for me with a lot of the stuff that I was intrigued about as to how OpenAI went from a nonprofit with Elon Musk over in that transition to Sam Altman's regime, so to speak. But it really does open up the whole profit with Microsoft versus nonprofit and unravels that stuff for those that are interested in knowing why it came about. Because without money, I mean, they couldn't do the things that they're doing. So it wasn't going to succeed if it was just a nonprofit. And then that Microsoft deal also included them using Azure exclusively. So there's this arms race going on, with all these chips. And so I'm listening to another book on chips right now as well. Simultaneously, I'm listening to these two books, and it's interesting to see this world that we're going into where the chips really matter. It's like he who has the most chips and the most efficient systems is going to win. So it's a great book to lean into. And to wrap it up, I want to thank our crew. We've got behind the scenes Taylor, 1F Jeff, we got Alan, Peter, and Robert. Thanks guys for diving in there. Pre-show, I was looking at all the stuff they got to juggle around. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun learning this stuff. And I noticed Marcelo was back there as well. And then we had Michael B, who also asked some questions, Boitnot. So great to have him on board and to see people in the community diving in and wanting to get a sneak peek. So I invite you guys again to look at officehours.global/volunteer and just come on in and take a look around and see what we're doing, because that interface alone and seeing VisVector and how the MEs are built, how we're doing these 2-ups, 3-ups, 4-ups and switching fast. It's really cool. It's not StreamYard. This is like industrial grade. This is what you see on broadcast. So cool to see that we're leaning in and using this stuff that's used in the real world, bigger productions, and people like 1F Jeff, who I've done broadcasts with that went out on air. So these are the real guys. These are real people setting this stuff up, and it's a lot of stuff to learn and great opportunity. So dive in. And that's going to wrap up this one. Hopefully Grant will be back next week from his travels, and we'll have our regular host back in. But thank you guys for the opportunity to host today, and I'll catch you next week.